Hello everyone. So this is a quick video I want to make. This is very simple. I made this recording 3 times. The first time I was really mad, the second time I was a little more reasonable. This third time I'm hoping is the charm, because seems like I didn't get any audio from it. But hopefully this time it'll work. So I've been running a D&D campaign using 4th edition D&D in a setting based off in a Theros setting. Theros is it's inspired from Greek myths. It's for the purpose. It's from Magic the Gathering because a lot of my friends were into Magic the Gathering, and so am I. But I also like D&D, and I thought this would be a good way to turn some of my Magic friends into D&D friends. It kind of worked. But a lot of us, I'm also a huge fan of Critical Role, and so are some of my other D&D people who are actually kind of into D&D a bit. Well, it's complicated, but it's not worth going into. So, my campaign's been going along pretty well, but there has been one noticeable thing where some people can ask if I would be willing to try and convert the whole campaign into 5th edition. Since the general rule set is 4th edition, but I utilize a lot of 5th edition style rules. I said I wouldn't mind, but I'd have to acquire all the books and stuff and need to really understand the rules before I really felt comfortable DMing it. But most of the resources are available, so it wouldn't be too hard to acquire the book. So I went through and decided to test something to see what was different. I looked at the Monster Maker, because 4th edition and 5th edition have a very different mindset for how rules work. So in your typical D&D campaign, you fight a bunch of monsters. Usually there's a bunch of small fry, and at the end of the dungeon there's a big boss. Sometimes if your DM is feeling a little crazy, they'll throw a hard encounter in between as a sort of mini-boss. The important thing here is that 4th edition was very rules heavy, and it has a very different idea of how fights and monsters are handled. If I'm gonna be honest, it just does it better than 5th edition. It's the one thing that I would definitely say 4th edition does better than 5th edition is how it handles monsters. See, there are 6 kinds of monsters in 4th edition. I call them archetypes: skirmishers, brutes, soldiers, lurkers, controllers, and artillery. Now, what's the difference between all of them? Well, the general rule is the things that really differ are how much hit points the monster have, what its defenses are, how accurate its attacks land, and the amount of damage they deal when they hit. Because again, it's a tabletop game, so there's a lot of stats involved. That's generally the rule. You can have hypothetically speaking, a creature like a brute, for example, has high hit points, low accuracy and defenses, but high damage output. However, having said that, you could technically take, say, a brute's stats and instead make them some sort of warlock. High damage output, high hit points. It could work. Just imagine instead of a big ogre with a club, it's just a warlock with low armor, and they do magic damage instead of physical damage. In addition to these archetypes, as I call them, there's also 3 special, categories of different kinds of monsters that are only in 4th edition: elites, solos, and minions. Minions are pretty basic. No matter what archetype it is, a minion only has 1 hit point. What's the point of that? Well, they kind of fill out the encounter space. 4 minions are worth 1 creature. They're still a threat, they still have defenses, and they will do damage. Now, elites and solos are the mini bosses and bosses of the world. A solo has 4 times the hit points that they themselves can be the encounter. An elite, meanwhile, is worth typically 2 of one creature. And what I like about this system is that it means that there's a clear divide with things. You don't want to just throw a bunch of monsters? Well, throw a solo at them. Maybe you just want an encounter to be 2 creatures that you think are really cool. Well, just make them elites. And this adequately works with my philosophy of designing monsters. A boss fight, to me, is not just a creature that ate more Special K that morning. That's one problem I have with the challenge rating system in 5th edition. It's all basically relative to the player's level. So something like say a beholder in this world has a challenge rating of 13 in 5th edition. That means that at lower levels, a beholder's kinda dangerous. But once you eclipse to a certain point, beholders aren't as scary. Eventually, you'd presumably would have to start throwing more dangerous creatures at them. And I know what you're thinking, well, why don't you just soup up the beholder so it does more damage? Well, yeah, I get that. I understand how it's like how monster levels work, but in 4th edition, beholders were elites. They were themselves more significant to the encounter. They are worth twice the XP as another creature of the same level. I was comparing the stats of a beholder to a storm giant as well. And the other problem I have is that while they are different creatures, it makes sense that they, say, have different attacks, do different damage, have different HP pools and defenses because they're different creatures. The problem I have is that it's a much less intuitive system to break down. Again, while the leveling system may not be the best, it's not that far off from what we have with challenge rating. It's just levels, but instead of being a level 1 creature or a level 33 creature, you have a challenge rating of 13 of 1/8 to a challenge rating of 30. I have no idea what kind of party can take on a challenge rating of 30, so in general, I understand that this is not the most popular opinion, but while 4th edition had its flaws, if there's one thing you can't fault it for, it's that the monsters felt truly monstrous at the time. If you fought a boss, you knew you fought a boss. The problem I have with 5th edition is, hypothetically speaking, after a while, that thing that was a boss fight, it's just a regular enemy to the players now. And that kind of makes the world of Magic lose something. Thank y'all for watching.